Hello and welcome. This is a virtual version of our district workshop. This is the asynchronous version, and if you would like to earn professional growth points for watching this and reviewing the slideshow and participating in some of the activities, you can submit the Google form that is linked to this, and you should be able to get those PGPs emailed to you. So our focus in this session was gamifying learning, ways to bring in review games and fun activities to encourage teamwork, competition, and a love of learning in your classroom. So our slideshow can be accessed here, bit.ly/12gamify. All right, so some of the goals for our session today include recognizing the benefits of gamified learning activities to support learner engagement and comprehension, practice using some of these tools, perhaps from a student perspective, and planning to use 1 to 2 tools in an upcoming lesson, unit, or whatever your instructional role is. So with that being said, what is gamified learning? So gamified learning is using strategies, competition, challenges, and tasks in the learning environment. It sometimes involves using technology to do some type of review game to help students get to that basic level Bloom, so where they can remember and recall and comprehend the information. But other times it's a little bit more advanced. It's giving learners problems and they use the information to solve them. It can be hands-on activities. It can be breakout rooms and escape rooms, which are a little bit more higher order thinking than just remembering information. And they can involve technology, or it can be very low technology, depending on what you would like to do. So because we are in an e-learning environment, a lot of the ones I'll show you today do involve technology, but there are ways you can adapt the tools and strategies that we talk about, or if we go back face-to-face in an in-person classroom if you don't want to use technology. So with that being said, there are lots of universal design for learning connections when it comes to gamifying learning and bringing some fun review game activity components to your learning. Obviously, engagement's a big piece in this. Our students love playing video games. They like leveling up and earning badges and love that competition. It's something that they seek out in their free time. So it is something that's engaging and relevant for them. So it connects to that recruiting interest piece. Gamified activities are also great for keeping your students motivated, right? It's capturing and really hooking their attention and giving them the opportunity to come back for more. It's great for real world applications as well, especially if you do some of these strategic, collaborative type of gamified learning experiences where students are solving problems and they have to work together and use resources. And then as well, it also helps students get feedback. A lot of the review game tools that I'll show you today give instant feedback to students, let them know where they stand, and it's a great way to give really quick reflection opportunities as well. And then lastly, some of them do involve teamwork, which is a great way to foster that collaboration bit in universal design for learning. The first tool that we're going to talk about today is maybe one that you've heard of before, and it's called Quizizz. So this is more of the basic level Blooms. It's recall and remembering, and it's an online review game tool. So Quizizz, you can play it a couple different ways. You can play it live, so it's synchronous, or you can play it asynchronous at the student's own pace. And that asynchronous mode is really great for e-learning and practicing, and that's called the homework mode on Quizizz. So the types of questions in Quizizz, it's mainly multiple choice. You can do true, false. You can have questions that have more than one possible answer. And you can add images into your questions as well. So it's a little bit more supportive of multiple options for perception and language and symbols. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview here. And on my slideshow, if you are looking at it, I have the resource linked here on the title. And I also have linked it on the tech tool here. And I put a tutorial video there as well. So you have a couple different ways you can get training resources. And if I had a written guide, I link that as well, which most of the tools do. So to get to Quizizz, you will have to create an account the first time. And they do have a create account with Google, so it's one less password for you to remember. So when you go to Quizizz the first time, you have a couple of options here. There is a library here, and these are all quizzes and things that other teachers have made, so you can borrow from those and copy those and make them your own and customize them as you need to. And whenever you like one, whenever you click on it, you can do copy and edits, or you can just save in a folder if you catch it and you think it looks great but don't have the time to edit it right now. All right. And if you save and if you copy and edit this, that means that you have the ability to change those questions without affecting the original owner's stuff. So that's helpful as well. Whenever you find one you like, it does give you a preview over all of the different groups, not groups, but answers here and questions. So you get a preview what those look like. So if I have a question, or if I find one that I think is one that I want to use, so here's an example of one I made. My library is all of my quizzes that I've made. But if I wanted to create one from scratch, I would just click create, quiz or lesson. So the lesson makes your quizzes questions as a part of a slideshow. So that is something you can use, but it still is in beta mode. And I'll just speak from experience. I've used it and played around with it a couple times, and it has been a little buggy. So if you want to use that, I would maybe give it a month or two longer until it's out of beta mode and it's a little bit more functional. So to add this quizzes, we'll give it a title and subject area and click next. And here's the different types of questions that you can do. So you can add in the slide that makes it that lesson one that I was just talking about. Open-ended, poll, multiple choice, checkbox, which is more than one possible answer, and fill in the blank. So if I want to add a new question, I will select from these. And the great thing with poll is that that's another option for surveying your students. But if I wanted to do one of these types of questions, you have some options here. Math teachers, they have a pretty sweet math equation editor here, which is awesome. And if you like to use the Google Chrome extension Equatio works on this website. So that is a tool that's in your toolbox. You can use it on this site. You can add pictures, audio, and video as well to make it more accessible. I have the same options here. I don't have audio and video on the answer options, but I could add pictures as well. So you have a timer here for how long students have to respond to this question. So whenever I am finished editing here, I'm going to select the correct answer. And if I had more than one correct answer, I could select all of those if I was in the checkbox version, but I'm just in multiple choice right now. So I'll click save. Okay. And there is my first question. All right. So I would just keep repeating that process and adding as many questions as I needed to for all of this. And then whenever I am finished adding my questions, I can add a picture here that kind of signifies to my students what's this about, and I'll click done. Right. I'm going to pick something random here because I don't have a picture related to this topic. Saved. And you select your grades, and this just makes it so that whenever they publish your quiz to the Quizizz library, if you let them do that, then people can search for it if they also want to be able to use your quizzes. Okay, so here is where you can utilize some of those awesome features and options that I talked about earlier. It shows me all my questions and things here, and I can add more to it as I need to, and I can even copy and print this as well, and it does print really clean. But if I wanted to use this with my students, you have two options here. Start a live quiz is in the moment live. So the way Quizizz works is that students join with a join code, and then they go through the quiz in the game on their own computer. So your instructor screen would only show the scoreboard so they can see who's going through the scoreboard at once. You do have the ability to turn off the scoreboard if that's too distracting for some of your students, if you're doing this in a Google Meet or if you're doing this in person. If that stresses some of them out or just makes them rush through, then you can definitely turn that off. The other option here is asynchronous, which is really great for e-learning when you have students scattered in different places and they're going through things at their own pace. You can assign it as homework, and it doesn't have to be a homework assignment, but it just leaves it open for an extended amount of time, and you can toggle how many times students can play the game. It can even give them feedback. You have options there on how to do that. One of the cool things with the assign homework option that I really like is that it gives you this little dashboard, and you can send a message to the student's email showing them their performance, and it creates charts and things they can review. And you can also send that to a parent if you have a parent email as well. So I just think it's a fun way to help students practice and just get a little bit more familiar with some of these concepts. So I'm just going to demo really quick what a live quiz looks like, and then I'll do the other option. All right. So again, you have two options here. And if you've been using Quizizz for a little while, this is a little different. You have two options now. So classic is students go through this at their own pace. And that's one of the unique things here with Quizizz is technically when you play a live game, you are not controlling when students go through those questions. That's where it's a little bit different than Kahoot. I don't advance on the next question. The only thing I see on my screen is the leaderboard. If I wanted to make it to where I'm determining when we go on to the next question, then I would select this instructor-paced option, which, that doesn't necessarily give them as much time, but you are more setting the pace and have a better idea of when the activity will be finished for your own planning purposes. So I'm just going to do classic. All right. And you can do team as well. All right. I'm going to scroll further down and you can decide how many times they can take this. And you can decide if they can see answers after the activity. And again, here's some additional times. There is a timer that shows up on the screen. I would leave that. I would go through it and ask your students if they'd like the timer on or off. That can be stressful for some students, but it can be helpful for others. So you have the option there. And again, these are just more of your settings. The unique thing with Quizizz is that anytime you play, students get little memes that pop up after they answer questions in between the next question. So it's kind of a fun thing there. So whenever I'm finished, I'll just click continue, and I'm actually going to open this up in another tab so we can see. And this is where your students would go, or you can share a direct link, which is pretty cool as well. So that's what you can share in Google Meet or whatever video conferencing tool that you're using, okay? So you have to register to play this game the first time. Otherwise, on my settings there, I could have just made it to where students could type in their own name. And then they can enter their name there and change it. So students have options here on their screen. They can have things read aloud to them, which is a fun accessibility feature. There's sound and music that goes with it, and they can even turn off the memes if they want to. All right. But this is what it looks like. And they can select their theme. And then whenever the teacher has decided that it's time to start playing, I'm going to go back to teacher view here really quickly. It tells the teacher how many students have joined. And whenever they're here, you click start. All right, so on my board, I would see all of these different students if there's more than one. And then if students don't get the answer right, you still see a meme, but give them a score. So the way that this game works specifically is that students get points based on accuracy, not necessarily just speed. So yes, it helps if you answer it correctly faster, but it's unlike Kahoot to where speed is such a determining factor. So it's more based on accuracy. So that's what happens when students play the game from the student perspective. Teacher perspective here, I can look at their data. I get an idea here on their score, what they struggled with, and it would show all of my students here. If I look at questions, and it shows me an overall snapshot over how all of those students answered it. And what's cool is that you can email parents as well with this feature. So you could type in their email address, and then this is the little crafted one they have there, but you can customize it as you need to. So that is a pretty cool feature. Whenever you're finished with the game, you just click exit. And if you wanted to do a homework version of this, where it's not a live in the moment type of game, here's an example. I would click assign homework. And here's where you can have it set for an extended amount of time. So if I wanted this to be open for a little over a week, I can leave it there. I can decide the time frame that it closes. And then if you set up a class on Quizizz, which you can do, but you don't have to, then you can select the class if you have multiple. Here's where you have options on how many times they can play it, when they can see answers, timer, all of those other options that we saw before, and then the memes. So whenever you're finished, this is the information you would share with students. So you could copy this link here and then do join my quiz, and they could enter through code. And as they're going through and completing the activities, you see how they're completing them and their scores. You can print the results afterwards. You can download them. And then it's also available in reports. Any past quizzes that you do here, you can always see how students scored on that, and then also revisit the join code information if students forget how to participate in that if you had it set up differently. So that is Quizizz. It's a pretty cool tool. And this tool is Quizlet. So Quizlet is an online flashcard study tool, but there's also review games. So there's a paid version, a premium version. The paid version is a lot of bang for your buck. It's less than $30 for a year. So I used to buy it when I was in the classroom just because I liked it so much and would use it all the time. And there's options to play Quizlet in a couple of different ways. And they've actually made new options now that we've been in e-learning. So if you want to play a live game, there's Quizlet Live in groups and Quizlet Live individual. But there's also a lot of asynchronous games that students can play on their own time. So as always, I linked some resources here if you wanted them. There's a written guide, a video tutorial, and then a blog there that talks about different ways you can use Quizlet in a virtual learning environment, which was really helpful. So I'm just going to show you how you can play this new feature on Quizlet. If you've used this tool before, it's pretty familiar. So the way that Quizlet works is you can organize, first you have to create your account. And once you do that, you can organize all of your classes here. You can make a class and then students join it. So whenever you publish vocabulary flashcards, they get a notification and they can easily access them from there. So that's great if you plan on using this tool often and always want to have it as a resource for students to go back to. The vocabulary flashcards that you create are called sets. And here's some examples of ones I've made. All right. And what's cool with Quizlet is when you make a study set, you can add in pictures, and these pictures all came from just the picture search tool that's built into Quizlet. You have your term, your definition, your picture,
civilization, an advanced human system.
Read out loud if you need to, and if you star it, then it's one that's a favorite on the list and the students can come back to and favorite it there. So these are just some examples of ones that I had here. If I wanted to edit this, I could and add more terms. If I wanted to move this to a class folder so my students can see it and access it there, they could. And the student view on this is that when they go and visit your class, they will have the option to review the terms there, listen to them, see the picture, practice. But they also have the features here where they can do flashcards. They can practice learning the tools, which just reads it out loud and gives them definitions, practice writing them, practice spelling, and do a little test over the terms. And then these are some of the games they can play on their own time. So Match and Gravity are asynchronous games. Match is just like the name implies, matching the terms and the definitions. And Gravity is kind of fun. It's kind of a race against the clock to get the terms started, and it's all space themed. So this is one your students could play. They set the difficulty. All right. And it's going to show concepts, and you are supposed to type out the definition before it reaches the bottom. All right. So that is a fun game there, and it is kind of difficult. So I usually actually set that to easy because it's challenging. The other option here for live games for your students, which is really great for like a Google Meet or if you're in person, is the live version of Quizlet. And Quizlet Live has two versions now. If you've used this feature before, there used to be the original Quizlet Live, which was great for live learning activities with your students, and it was group-based. So if you've played Quizlet Live before, the way it works is it takes all of the vocabulary terms in your study set, and it's a group game. So your students join using a join code. And then what you do is whenever they've all joined, you click start game and it randomly puts them into groups, and you can reshuffle them if you want. And whenever you start the game, the students have to work together in this. And it's always a 12-question game. You could have 50 vocab cards, but it's always only 12 questions, and it cycles through different ones each time. And what students do is if they're in a group of 4, it's going to show the vocabulary word across the top of the screen, and they have to find the right definition or vice versa. But it might not be on their device. It could be on their partner's device over there or someone else on their team. So they have to work together and communicate with each other to figure out who has the correct answer on their screen. So that's the fun kind of team aspect of it, is they do truly have to work together because they're using multiple devices and the answer is not always right in front of them. What Quizlet has done is, in light of e-learning and the fact that all of our students are scattered across different places and doing this type of team activity could be really difficult because of that. They have changed Quizlet Live to where you have an individual option as well. So you can be playing it live, but students don't have to be on a team to be able to do this activity. So what I would do here is select my option, and I would do individual, and then this determines the way the questions are presented to students. So do they get the definition, they pick the term, or do you give them the term and they have to match the definition? I'm just going to do this one. And then it plays music here for students. And you can turn that off if you want to. You could change it to teams. But students join here on different devices. You have to have at least 2 students join to be able to play. So again, I'm just going to pull this up so you can see what it looks like. All right, so I have joined here on 3 different accounts. So while students are joining and they're waiting, it's actually going to give them a refresher of some of the terms that they might see in the game. So this is on the student view right now. When I go back to my teacher view, I see all of the students who have joined. And whenever we are ready to go, I click Create Game, right? And it gives them these kind of goofy names so that when you're playing the game, they don't see the kid's name and know who's doing really well and maybe who is struggling with some of the questions. And if you wanted to shuffle the teams, you could, and that just gives them different names here. If they need to add more players, you can do that, but it keeps a code across the top of the screen in case anyone joins late. And whenever you're ready, you just click Start Game. So this is a little similar to Quizizz in that on the teacher screen, you are not controlling the pace of the game. You are there purely as the leaderboard and to facilitate. On the student screen is where they see the questions. So I had pictures with a lot of these questions on my study set, and it brings the pictures there as well, which is pretty cool. So as students answer the questions, you'll see who's winning here across the top. And it's all based on accuracy. So the first person to get to 12 points wins. If you get a question wrong, actually, it takes back all of your points and you drop back down to 0. So whenever you play this game, I would recommend that you just set aside some time, because sometimes if the questions are really hard, it takes students a little bit because they drop back to 0. So it's kind of a fun game. And whenever it gets to 12, it shows which team, which person won at the end, and you can play it again. You also can see which questions students got wrong most often. So that is Quizlet Live, and it's a fun one. And now that it's got that new feature, you can play that in a virtual environment pretty seamlessly. All right, the next
Hello and welcome back. In this video,
we are going to talk about. All right, the next tool we're going to talk about is a fairly new one called BlueKit, and this is another review game tool. We'll get to a little bit more higher order thinking beyond just basic comprehension in a second, but this is another fun review game that you might want to bring into your classroom to help students remember concepts. And this one is another free one. There's a paid version, but you don't need that to be able to use the features. This one also has the ability to support single player games or multiplayer, as well as live or student-paced asynchronous options. So that's why it's great for e-learning, because you have some flexibility there. You can add images and text into your game to provide multiple means of representation, and there's a guide tutorial linked there. So to play BlueKit, it's a little bit similar to Quizlet, and that's why I put them in this order, because they kind of build off of each other. And then whenever you go and play a game, you make a set, and your set is your combination of questions and answers. Okay, so here's an example of one. And some of the questions I put on here, and it's by default, it sets it to where it's a random answer order, so students see different ones on their screen. There's a time limit here, and you can change that as you need to. Here's some different answers. You can't have more than one correct answer on this game. I will tell you that is purely multiple choice. You can also import questions from Quizlet. So if you are a Quizlet user, but you want to bring in a different type of game for your students, you don't have to sit here and retype every single one. So to show you this, I'm just going to open Quizlet again. And if I wanted to make a new study set on BlueKit, you have your menu here across the top. This is where you could go to play a live game. Discover is where you can borrow from existing ones that teachers have published and copy them and make them your own, so you're not starting from scratch. Home is this dashboard here where it shows any that you've made. You can organize them in folders if you want for separate classes that you might teach. And then create is where you make a new one. So you have to add a cover image and a title. And then here is where you just have some basic question settings in publication settings. So I'm just going to add a picture here. I'm just let this public so other people can see it if they need to. And I'm just going to do Quizlet import just to show you that and then create my set. All right. So here is where you have some options. You want to import into Quizlet. You click your Quizlet there. It will bring it up. I already had it open. But what you need to do is so you don't have to type out every single study set. I'm just going to go here into a study set I've already used. I'm going to scroll a little bit further down the page where it shows my profile here. And, oops, wrong button. And when I see this 3-dot button, there's an export button, and that's your friend. So we'll click export. If I scroll further down the page, I'm going to click copy text. You don't have to do any changing of the settings there. I'm going to come back, click next, and it's going to guide me through this process as well. If I'm going a little too fast for you, it tells you. The next step, I'm going to paste in everything that I just copied from Quizlet. I'll do add questions. And then the magic happens. What it did is it didn't transfer over the pictures. That is the one thing I will tell you. It does not transfer the pictures over, but it did transfer over all of my questions and all of my correct answers. So that is pretty cool. Pretty cool. So whenever you are finished, you can add more questions manually here, or you can click Save Set. And this is where we can start to play. So I'm just going to have some options here. If I play it solo, then it's just me playing this game. But if I click Host, that's where I have options for my students to play. Right? And this is the cool thing with BlueKit is it's more than just one game. So it's a little different than Quizlet and Quizizz in that there are so many different types of games built into this one review game tool. Now that's only a plus feature, but it will be released to everyone here soon, tomorrow actually. Here are some of the different games that you can play. Whenever you click one of these, it tells you just some tips here on how this game goes, if it's better as a team activity or solo, and then how many minimum players you need to be able to play this game effectively. But I do want to point out that there's a difference here. On this game, it says homework or host. If it says homework, then that means you can do this game student-paced asynchronously. They'll get a link, they can play it at their own time. They don't have to wait for you to be facilitating a live session. If it only says host, then that is a live synchronous game and you're all playing at the same time. They can't play it like an hour later. You all have to be playing then. So that's a helpful thing to know as you go through this when you see homework, asynchronous, host, synchronous, right? And there's a variety here of ones you can play. And whenever you find one that you like, it's similar to Quizizz in that you can decide how long you want to have this open for students and for when, and then you click Assign Now, and then it's going to give you a link and or a code, depending on how you want to share it, that students can use to play this game. So there's the link. That's what I would put in your It's Learning course. And then here is your data that shows you how students have been performing. And you can refresh it over time, and then here it tells you specific question data as well. All right, so that is BlueKit, and it's a pretty fun game that students play. And if students play it often, they earn money in BlueKit's system, and they can come over here to Blooks, and it's like a little store, and they can buy these different characters and play with them. So same thing in the market here. This is where they can buy some of the different things that they can play in the game, and it's almost like they're leveling up with the more money and points that they have, right? So kind of a fun thing there for students if you use this tool often. And that is BlueKit.
Hello and welcome back.
All right, the next tool is one that's within Pear Deck, and it's called Flashcard Factory. This is a great vocabulary tool. Specifically, if you are a foreign language teacher or you work with English language learner students, this tool was actually developed in Pear Deck for that purpose, to support those different populations, whether you're learning a new language or you're helping students learn a new language. And it is a feature in Pear Deck that you can use whether you have the free version or the paid version. The only thing you need is to make sure that you have a Pear Deck account, which you can create for free. Go to peardeck.com and click Teacher Login. And then log in with Google or create an account with Google. And once you have done that, it will take you to your Pear Deck teacher dashboard, and you'll have the opportunity to select vocabulary, which is Pear Deck Flashcard Factory. It's this little green one here. So what you're going to do is click Create a Vocab List. And Flashcard Factory is fun because the way this game works is you'll put all of your vocab terms and definitions here, and you can also import from Quizlet, and I'll show you how. But what it does is it puts students into 2 teams. So this does work best if you're in a live environment. You can do this in person, or you can do this over a Google Meet. I do have a couple teachers that I've talked with, and they experimented with this, and they did this over Google Meet, and it was really fun. They don't have to be looking at each other's screens and communicating in that way to be able to play this game. And what this does is it puts them in 2 teams, and then it takes your vocab words and it assigns the words to both teams. And students are given the task to either write a definition for that vocab word, or they have to make a drawing on here. And then it gives them different ones every single time. And then at the end, you as the teacher or you as the class vote on which pictures or definitions you felt like best represented that term. And then the team with the most points or most votes is the winner. So it's a fun kind of spin on things. They're manipulating their understanding beyond just a basic recall. They're doing illustrations as well. So that can be kind of a fun thing for your students. So you could sit here and type out every term and definition if you need to. But if you wanted to save yourself some time, and if you're already a Quizlet user, you know I love Quizlet, you can import that from Quizlet. So if I pull up Quizlet yet again, probably should have kept that open. It's similar to what we just did in BlueKit, where we exported that list. So I'm going to take this one, and we're going to click the 3-dot button and do export. And then it shows me all of this. I don't have to change anything. I just have to click copy text. And then if I come back over here, I'm just going to paste and then import. All right. And here it shows all of those cards. And this one was a really big study set, so there's a lot there. And whenever I'm finished, I can share this with my students so they can practice playing, or I can just click Play Flashcard Factory here. All right, so students join with a join code here. And the way that this works, again, is a little bit similar to Quizlet Live. They join with the code, it puts them in 2 teams. And then on their screens, what they see are either they're given the task to make a drawing or to make a definition. And they go through that, and they're not given every single word in your vocab list, but most of them, it just randomizes them. Whenever you're finished, you as the teacher can decide who did the best job, or you as a class can vote, and then whoever gets the most points wins. So that is a fun game there as well, just for helping support some of that vocab acquisition. All right. So next one is Flippity, and Flippity is a collection of games, spinners, and review tools. There's really a lot here, and usually the way that Flippity works is that it's actually a Google Sheet or spreadsheet. You don't be scared if I say that. Some people think, oh, I don't know how to use spreadsheets or do those equations. Can I use this tool? And yes, what Flippity does is it puts all the special coding and equations into the spreadsheet, and then all you have to do is just plug in your own information on that, and they always walk you through how to do it. So if I go to Flippity, I can see some of the different options of games that they have here, and they're all free. There's the game show here, which is similar to like a Jeopardy game. There's manipulatives, board games, scavenger hunt, matching games, all different things here, and even word searches. So all you have to do is whenever you see a specific spreadsheet that you like, you can see a demonstration of it. You can see instructions, and if you feel like you're ready to make your own copy of it and use this template, you click template, and it gives you a copy. And even within this template, it gives you instructions on where you plug in your own information and what equations to make sure you don't delete. So here's an example of one. And then here it says get the link. All right. And what it does is it does involve publishing your spreadsheet, and that makes it so the students can actually play the game. So this is a fun one as well. Again, more of just comprehension and recall information, but it's a fun option that's a little bit different. You have lots of different game versions here you can play as well. The next one that we're going to talk about, maybe, are just some additional fun tools here. Two of them I have on here do come with a little bit of a price tag in that you're limited in the number of free games you can make before you have to start paying. But this first one here is totally free, but does involve a little bit more planning and building things on the back end on your side. And that's just making escape rooms and breakout rooms with Google Forms and even just other resources than just Google Forms. And the fun thing with this is that it goes beyond just basic memorization and recall of information. You can have students doing a variety of tasks in this. So here are some examples. And this is a Google site that I built this on, but you can build this on a Google Doc if you wanted to, a Google slide. You have lots of flexibility. So in this specific breakout room, there's a picture here, and the task is to look around in this picture for clues to answer these questions. Okay? I have seen this done a variety of ways. I've seen the picture task here. I've seen where teachers make a video and students watch the video and that sends them somewhere else. The cool thing is if you use some type of image or slide here is that you can kind of sneak in lots of different resources because you can add so many pieces of content to this. So examples here is that there's a calendar. So if you hover over this, you notice the mouse changes, gives you a calendar. So if I was doing this in a classroom, maybe this links to a text. And students have to read this text and review the information before they can move on. They have to type out a response, or they have to analyze perspectives or analyze a picture. So it's more than just basic recall. They're doing some active learning strategies here. I have a friend who is a social studies teacher, and what he did is he built in lots of different primary and secondary sources here. So he had videos and speeches and pictures that the students would analyze. And then they would send him a message if they thought they had the right answer, and then he would give them the next clue. So that's another way that you can do this in like a live setting on a Google Meet, is that you're kind of the gamekeeper and the students give you answers and they work together as a team. And if you want to do that in a virtual setting, they could be sharing their ideas on a Google Doc together, what they think the answers are, and then one person could be the one who communicates to you, the teacher. So it's not just like 30 kids unmuting and talking to you at once. It's one strategic person. They have an assigned role. So the way that you can do this is just examples here. And I linked this website on my Google Slides so you can reference it. And here are some additional questions here. So some of these are words that they had to find. Others are number combinations. And this is a Google form where I set it up with response validation. So it's looking for a certain answer. And if you don't put that certain answer in, it tells you right away. Right? It will tell you that your answer is wrong. So if I click submit, right? So it tells me that's required. This one here, it tells me that's wrong. So that's a way you can set up a Google form. And Nick Williams has some information in his session from this month's workshop on how you can do that. But I've also linked tutorials here that show you how, as well as examples if you wanted to get started but didn't really know where to start. There are 30 examples here on this Wakelet document from other teachers across the country and how they made their own digital escape rooms and use them in virtual learning environments. And there's so many fun ideas here across a variety of subject areas. And one of the things that I think is so awesome in this is you have so much creativity, and some of the people really set the stage from the beginning of this. Like there's a zombie apocalypse and they dress up like a zombie, and that's how they get the lesson started for students. So lots of fun ideas here. And I hope you enjoy looking at those. The other resources that are here, this is a fairly new one, is called No Word. And this is another vocabulary idea. And what it does is it makes vocabulary flashcards, and then students match the correct terms with the definition. And it's a pretty fun one, but you only get a couple of plays on this before you use it, and they make you start paying for it. So that's another game there. And the same thing with Gimkit. I think you get about 3 games before they start asking for payment. It's another fun one. So here are just some additional resources for remote learning games in a virtual environment and how you can play with those, whether they're low tech or high tech. And if you have questions, please let me know. I know I went over the little 30-minute time slot that was initially planned for this. And that's because in the actual session, we only went over about 3 of those tools, where I just went through about 7 with you in this version. Whenever you've finished watching this and you've tinkered around, just make sure you do the Google form so you can get professional growth points.